Welcome to Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast. I'm your host, Pete B. And as always, this offseason, I've got my co-host, Sam Jesse. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. It has been a crazy week. Vacation coming up. I told you right before we logged on, this is my break for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever you have to leave for a trip, I feel like, at least for me, because I'm the worst with packing. I'm the guy who has the 10 extra shirts and underwear and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, hopefully you're going to have a good time. You're leaving on Friday, right?
I'm going to have a great time. Yeah, I'm going to visit my best friend just moved to Italy. So I'm going to support him and been learning some Italian and really gonna have a good time.
Nice, dude. Well, why don't you give us a cheers and we'll get this thing kicked off and get into some news and notes.
Yeah, well, my cheers today is again another personal one. It's my dog's birthday today. So my
Happy
dog
birthday
Baker,
to the pooch.
here, come here, Bubba. Baker, come here. He's in bed. There he is. There you are, Baker Boo Bear.
I think this is only the second or third dog we've had on the pod.
He's very sleepy now. We had a long game of fetch in the yard, and then he got a steak bone for his birthday. So he's had an awesome day. He turns 4. So cheers to my best friend in the world, no longer being a puppy.
Cheers to that. I think you said his name was Peekaboo. Is it he or she?
Oh, it's a he. His name is Baker.
Oh, okay.
After the Heisman winning quarterback.
When he was the number 1 overall pick for your Brownies.
won a playoff game for the Cleveland Browns. The least I could do was name my dog after him, but it fits. He has the same personality.
Okay.
So it fits really well.
Good dancer, likes to
great dancer, cannon for an arm, like stocky. Yeah.
Total package. We are going to go over a handful of things. Now, since Sam was leaving on vacation, we wanted to get a pod out before he left. And up until now, Sam, I feel like this offseason has been pretty full of news items and things going on. We had, the winter sports with basketball and both teams playing, and then spring football started right up. We're in a little bit of a dead zone. That we are in full offseason mode. You timed your vacation right. But we're going to still do some basketball roster updates, football discussion, some portal notes there. And then later in the show, we're going to get to Sam's ACC power rankings, what he thinks the teams are looking like post-spring. And we actually were going back and forth about this a little bit, but that's going to be fun. I can't wait to talk about what maybe some of our opponents on next year's schedule are looking like. But first, let's start with women's basketball. And we had said before that Billy and Pat were doing some interviews, and I guess it's been Bill and Ed, and maybe someone else has worked their way in there, but Matilda Eck was on the show. That was a cool interview. Kayla King was on the show, very well received. And just yesterday, Liz in Georgia put out the 40th installment of Queens of Castle. And let's just say that show made some waves, right, Sam?
That's to put it lightly. It is somewhat disappointing to have 2 of the biggest stars that your athletic department has had in quite some time. For them to express, rightfully so, kind of their disappointment with a bit of the fan base. Now, they said it as well, and I think everyone knows it is a very, very small minority, but is a very loud vocal minority. And I think anytime you see 2 of your most beloved athletes kind of having that vitriol spewed to them, that's really, really tough. And I think
it was mainly Georgia, right?
Yeah, it was mainly Georgia. Obviously, Liz is, doing her thing with the WNBA draft and things like that. But it just hasn't been a good situation. And I feel for them. I feel for their families that it ended like it did. And you hope that time will kind of heal some of this, right? It does really feel like that was the end of it. And we'll, wish her the best in Lexington.
Yeah, I had written a piece yesterday or the day before about the Georgia situation, and it kind of was the first thing I ever wrote for Sons of Saturday. So other than a podcast summary, and I basically just went over the entire saga of how we got to this place that Georgia would be getting hate. And it was an op-ed piece. If you want to get specific, I offered an opinion kind of at the end of the piece, and just that, people who are upset, I totally understand it. She's going to be playing another uniform and she's a Hokie legend, but to that end, she is a Hokie legend. She graduated a Hokie and she gave us so many good memories, her and Liz together, that just you can be upset, but just don't direct it at her. Like, you direct it at anybody else, but you don't have to watch her games. You don't even have to wish her well. You just have to not send her a message or a death threat that she actually said that she got death threats. And those girls, they were honest. It took probably a lot of courage to come on and say all that stuff. And let me tell you, that interview has gotten aggregated quite a bit. There have been articles from national outlets talking about Georgia and Liz being upset. And Liz was getting emotional. Georgia maybe not so much emotional, but like showing the frustration emotion. And so I would encourage you to watch the interview. It might give you a little bit of closure on the whole topic. And if you want to read my piece, that'd be great. I just felt like for me, it was a way of giving myself closure on the thing. And maybe some other people will find that as well by reading the piece.
Yeah, I wish everything had been handled differently. I think a lot of people in the situation feel like if they had a do-over, it would have been done differently. That doesn't change, I think, how some people will react to it. But I think internally, from Virginia Tech's point of view and from Coach Brooks' point of view as well, I think everybody involved in those circles wishes they had a do-over.
Yeah, I think you are correct. And so we will move on to the current women's team and what they're doing on the recruiting trail, because they got a commitment from Kale Peterson, a 6-foot wing from Wisconsin. She was committed to Marquette and she has now flipped to the Hokies. She's a 4-star recruit. If you go to the Hoop Girls ranking, she's number 68.
Hoop Girls.
I don't
Sounds
know.
Sounds like a 90s R&B band.
It's ESPN's like official ranking is from Hoop Girls, but whatever. She's the number 68 recruit in the country. That's a very nice pickup. And so that's big. That's big time. Nice to get a 6-foot wing in the fold. And then we had Lonnie White and Ramaya White both committing, I think, on the same day last week. And they're not related, although they have the same name. Lonnie's a 5'11" guard who played for Utah last year. She's got 3 years of eligibility left. And Ramaya is a 6'5" center, which you'll keep in mind. We lost Clara Strock, so that's pretty nice to bring in a big center. And she was committed to Kentucky before she flipped to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, that's a really good pickup too. Kentucky, that Midwest isn't an area that Virginia Tech recruits. The Ohio Valley / Great Lakes region of the Midwest is something that Virginia Tech historically in a lot of sports doesn't recruit very much. So it does seem like they're starting to build a little bit of a footprint there, obviously with the Marquette ties. But interesting to get recruits from there where Virginia Tech doesn't normally get them for sports.
And that roster is filling out. There may be 1 or 2 slots left, but when it really came down to it, we lost a couple recruits that followed Kenny to Kentucky, and we obviously lost Georgia and Strock. But the damage could have been worse. It really could have been worse.
It could have been catastrophic.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have set the program back a couple of years.
Yeah, Duffy's done a nice job.
Duffy has done a
month.
I would say she has exceeded any expectations in terms of roster building. Done a really phenomenal job. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on coaching in women's basketball, but from non-Virginia Tech sources, it seems like she has built a dynamite roster in the coaching staff. So she seems to be about winning national championships. Like, she has that mindset about her.
I think I'm very pleased because the drop from what we just had, which was amazing, and there's going to be a drop from Final Four expectations. But I agree with you. She's motivated. She seems to be pressing all the right buttons. And from what I've heard about her coaching style, she's a tough coach too. So she's going to coach these girls up. So let's move to men's basketball. Jordan Ivy Curry. Talked a bunch about this guy. He decommitted from the Hokies. He is shown a history of committing and decommitting in the past, and he got us to the kid from UTSA is now deciding between Auburn, UCF, and Wake, whoever is offering the biggest bag of money, I would assume. So it's a loss. He's definitely a good player. I was looking forward to watching.
Well, two things. First off, in the world of transfer portal, I'll say this with football coming up here in a bit, and I say it now. You don't have the player until they play in a game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just how college athletics is now. Second off, life rule, it's not a pattern, it's a personality. And unfortunately, up there's Baker making an appearance. And it just seems, from the decommitments, committed to App State, then committed to UTSA, then transferred to Pacific, I believe it was. Pacific or Pepperdine, one of those two.
There was one in between, yeah.
Yeah, back to UTSA, then to Virginia Tech, then to the NBA draft, then back to Virginia Tech. Then, yeah, it's a unfortunately, there are some of those athletes out there in college sports today. And you wish them the best. Hope they can find a spot to settle down, because those are guys who need college degrees more than anything.
It's like when you go to the grocery store, Sam, now, like there's not just Cheerios and Life on the shelf. There's 4,000 choices, and these kids have so many choices. They don't have to sit out. They can go wherever they want every year. People are offering them money. So it can be paralysis by analysis. And in his case, he's just can't decide. He can't make a decision.
There's a football player who was a very high 4-star corner out of high school who was at LSU. I believe he transferred to UCF or from UCF, one of those, I don't know, but he was enrolled in 5 different schools in 5 semesters. Which I don't even know how admissions allows that to happen, but it is happening out there.
You might have heard this on whatever podcast it was, but that's what's going to be the detriment to the movement will be admissions. That's what they're saying, is like when a kid gets to a 3rd and 4th school, it can start to be a problem of what credits are actually going to transfer and how eligible you may or may not be.
Oh, you're going to have players who run out of eligibility and are 3 or 4 semesters away from graduating. It's going to happen with this new rule. Yeah.
Well, let's move to some good news, because we got a forward. That's what I'm thinking he is. He's kind of a wing. Toibu Lawal, hope I'm saying that right. He's a 6'8" wing from VCU, and that's a team that you know well. He is an athletic freak. What do you got to say about Lawal?
I'm sad he's leaving VCU, but I'm happy he's going to Virginia Tech. I tweeted this out. He's the best athlete that'll wear orange maroon since Deron Washington, and he probably jumps higher than Deron Washington did. We're talking Olympic style vertical leap at 6'8". He plays aggressive. He's an elite defender. Needs to bulk up a little bit. He got pushed around a bit in the A10. He's not a high skill guy, but he's a rim protector. Virginia Tech has not had that in quite some time. So I think he fills a need for this team. He's going to play minutes. He's not polished, but this staff has shown that they can work on the offensive game of unpolished post players. So if they get him a little bit of offensive game and he can get out and run as a big man, he could be a really exciting piece to this team. And it's someone that we have not seen Virginia Tech have a player like him.
Yeah.
I think ever. I don't think Virginia Tech has ever had an athlete like this.
What you need to do, if you're not believing what we're saying, go to Twitter, go to YouTube, type in Toibu Lawal or Lawal VCU. I retweeted like 7 of his highlights because they're all so freakish. Like him jumping, he practically hits his head on the rim every time he's grabbing a rebound or a putback or something. It's really insane. So yes, the athleticism is there. And I think you're right, Sam, that this staff has shown an ability to bring guys along. And this is a guy who is raw. He can do a lot of crazy things, but he's a raw basketball player. And I'm excited to have that athleticism on the team because that was a complaint we've had for a couple of years now. We also got a high school commit from Ben Hammond just the other day, a guard from Paul IV. He commits to the class of 2024. He will be here next year. A flip from University of Rhode Island. He was all Met last year, and he is Paul IV's all-time winningest player. That's a very good high school.
One of the best in the Mid-Atlantic, if not up and down the East Coast. And it just is really exciting to see us land a guy from a big school like that. I know Darius Maddox is from Oak Hill. That's a big win. But to get this guy is, if you can create a bit of a, I wouldn't even call it a pipeline because that's one of the most recruited schools in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can create some sort of relationship that, hey, Virginia Tech is an option for these guys, that's going to be huge going forward. And this kid seems to be the real deal. A lot of these recruiting analysts really, really like him.
Yeah, and he's a very high 3-star if you look at the composite. I saw him listed as a 4-star on some of the tweets that were coming out, but high 3-star on the composite, a top 200 player, great get. And this is a guy who's kind of on my shit list right now, and Jalen Brunson. And I'm going to relate Hammond to him in this way. Brunson was an incredible college player, won 2 national championships, Naismith Player of the Year, and yet still the NBA decided that he wasn't going to be good enough to play. He fell very far in the draft for his collegiate accomplishments. And this guy is a winning player at a great program that plays the same position, maybe a little undersized, and maybe we're getting him a little undervalued as well. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. And not that he has the same style as Brunson. I'm just saying, like, a point guard, a little undervalued, that plays for a great program. I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, so what it sounds like is that we're getting Jalen Brunson and like prime Jeff Green. So this sounds awesome.
Yeah, right. I don't even know who I would like compare Lawal to. That's I'm going to think about it as we kind of move through here, because right off the top of my head, like, Larry Hughes comes to mind. That is an extremely random person. You would remember him. He played for Cleveland for a minute, but he was on the Sixers before that.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of those guys that are just all bounce that make it to the NBA.
Yeah, yeah. There was this crazy leaper from, I want to say it was Memphis several years back, and he had like the most ridiculous combine 40 like vertical, and I can't remember his name, but that's another player that comes to mind. 11 scholarship players now on the roster. Despite losing Curry, we have 3 guards, 4 or 5 wings, depending on where you put Lawal, and then 3 or 4 bigs. Again, whether you want to call him a big or not, he's got a slight frame, but he's 6'8". So, I call him what you want, but we got 11 scholarship players. That is good. So baseball, Sam, let's do baseball right now. They're 31-14, 13-11 in the ACC. And they've won 5 in a row. Now, they did lose the series to UNC, but salvaged the last day with a 1-run win, and they just swept Ohio. There are a couple more series left before the season ends. How do you see that Miami and UVA series playing out? And how much, like, what's our, like, must-win scenarios for better seeding?
Okay, so right now, first off, the UNC win was great. I know you went 1-2. I said in the last 9 games of the ACC season, which was UNC, Miami, and UVA, needed to go 5-4. Like, that needed to be your goal going into the tournament. They're 1-2 right now. But Virginia Tech, first ACC team to win in Chapel Hill this season. Great win. And then took care of business against North Carolina A&T, took care of business in the sweep versus Ohio. They're currently losing to Liberty, which is not a great loss on the road at Liberty. Midweek game, Virginia Tech has been flawless in them this year. It was just bound to happen. They had a couple errors early, and that's what happens. It's not a good result, but life goes on. The key is this Miami series. Miami is a really scrappy team. They love to play close games, but they're only 8-16 in the ACC. So I think at home, this is a series Tech must win. You need to go 2-1. I think they could sweep this series if the starting pitching goes a little bit deeper than it has the last few weeks, but I'm going to call it 2-1. And then you have a few more non-conference games, a big game against James Madison, who is actually above Virginia Tech in the RPI right now. Virginia Tech lost to James Madison earlier in the year. So that's kind of a must win in order to boost the RPI a little bit. And then the series at UVA It goes without saying how big that is. UVA, top 15 team. They're going to be fighting at the top of that 2 seed line. So I would love to get at least one in Charlottesville. I think you need at this point heading into the ACC tournament.
We got to get one.
Yeah, it's going to be the ACC tournament. It's going to be rough if you're 1 seed. It's this conference is so stacked. I tweeted out 4 of the last 5 series of Virginia Tech's season are against top 15 teams. I just don't. It's ridiculous. Right now, they're sitting as one of the lowest 2 seeds or one of the highest 3 seeds. I think if they can go 3-3 against Miami and UVA, they'll probably stay there and take care of business in the non-conference against JMU and those likes. I think they'll be right about there. The key will be finishing above NC State and potentially even Duke in the ACC tournament and or standings.
Okay.
And another thing to think about, Virginia Tech actually has a better ACC record than Wake Forest, who is a top 15 team.
And gave us hell.
And has like 3 MLB pitchers on the team, like not minor league, like MLB quality pitchers.
We just got them at the complete wrong time.
Complete wrong time. They have not been, I will say they put 24 on the team they played tonight, but still, Virginia Tech has an opportunity to do things in Charlotte, the ACC tournament. I fully believe that. Like, they're a team that's built to just get hot.
Yeah.
So if they can get hot in Charlotte, if they can win 2 games in Charlotte, I think they sit at the end of that 2 line and are probably playing at Kentucky, at Tennessee, somewhere.
No more
there.
Kentucky, man. I'm tired of playing them and everything and losing our coach to them. And it's just too much.
I mean,
Kentucky.
it could be Kentucky, it could be Tennessee. Depending on how the Big 12 tournament goes, it could be West Virginia, man. It really could be.
That would be kind of fun.
It would be kind of fun. So
Diamond, was it Black Diamond Trophy on the diamond? Do they have
Black Diamond on the diamond? All
right,
we'll get Al to make a T-shirt already, just in case.
Softball still doing well. They did lose the series to Syracuse on the road, but they finished the season as the 3 seed in the ACC. The ACC championships actually started today. We play Georgia Tech tomorrow, 7:30 ACC network. So tune into that. If we win that game, I think we play at 1 on Friday. But softball's ACC's tough in softball too, but we have obviously been kicking butt. 39-11-1 is a hell of a record.
Yeah, and I think we go back to the beginning of this season when this team played at Auburn, they played at Georgia, they've played at Alabama. They've held their own and won a bunch of those games.
Yeah.
So I think this is a team that could go deep and make their way to Oklahoma City, which I think would be huge for the program because it seems like they're so close and they just can't get their way there. So
do you feel like this softball team is flying a little under the radar for how good they've been?
I think they're a lot under the radar.
Yeah.
I think part of it is because and I don't mean to blame one sport for keeping down another, but I think the energy of women's basketball has made it so that's covered a lot of this.
It sucked the air out of the room.
News cycle. Yeah. I mean, these girls are really good. They're run ruling teams. From what I've seen and from our writers who cover the team, they're very, very good.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch the game tomorrow. So if you guys are watching us on YouTube, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the Sons of Saturday.
Doesn't do it.
It helps us out so much if you like the video. And it was crazy, Sam. Yesterday, after the girls put out, I don't know if you guys know this if you're listening, but Liz and Georgia have their own channel now. They started on the Sons of Saturday channel. Now they have their own channel, which is still affiliated, whatever. But on their video that they posted yesterday, within 13 hours, it had 6,000 views, 440 likes, and 200 comments. Like, that is, like, if we get 3 comments on one of our videos, like, it's like, oh, that's kind of, we're doing good. Like, 200 comments and 440 likes, like, that's preposterous.
Yeah, man.
I know they're stars, so it's a totally different. We are not them. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like that video, even for them, exploded in terms of popularity.
I can't believe how much women's basketball and women's basketball athletes have blown up.
Yeah.
Because in the world of NIL, I mean, Caitlin Clark is probably only the second major NIL athlete other than, Caleb Williams was the first and then Caitlin short after. But then, like, I don't think we would have been talking about, oh, Virginia Tech's coach leaves because they aren't as competitive in NIL as an SEC school for women's basketball. Well,
I think
no shot that's a conversation 2 years
in
ago.
this episode alone, Sam, I think that would have been enough women's basketball talk for me and Robbie's first like 7 seasons. Like we just didn't talk about it much. Like we just did it.
No one did.
Yeah.
No one did.
So anyway, like the video. Wow. That's what that comes down to. I want to talk a little bit of football before we take our beer break, and then we're going to get to your power rankings. The Billy Height interview that was with Rich Luddenberger and Pat, that hit the Sons of Saturday feed. I know I'm promoting our own stuff here, but like that interview was awesome. If you are an old school Virginia Tech fan, or even someone like Sam who grew up loving the team, Height is running backs coach, and his stories and perspective and like talking about Frank and how he convinced him not to go to UNC. I mean, it is just a must listen interview. And there are so many nuggets in there that I loved.
Billy Height would always come up to my granddaddy before games, give him a handshake, talk to him a little bit while he was coaching, and then would even, invite him into his office. And then him and other people who had been, he had made friends with while being a coach on the sidelines. Back when you used to be able to just walk into Merryman and go into a coach's office and stuff like that. So I think the way that he was able to connect with fans in an age but before social media,
oh my gosh,
honestly, before the internet.
I mean, he was coaching for Tech in like 81. I mean, when was his first season? It was a long time ago.
Early 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the way that he was able to connect with fans and make them feel a part of the program in an era where you really couldn't do that at a lot of places unless you were the biggest of big donors to the program or had played for the program. So what he did there was in lockstep with what Frank Beamer did in terms of connecting with the fan base. And can't thank him enough for that and what he's meant. He is, as Rich Luttenberger coined, a Hokie worth his gobble.
Yes, that's right. I had never heard that before when Rich dropped that in the interview, and he did it pretty casually. But listen to the interview. Pat and Rich did a really good job with Coach Height. And there's a nugget in there around the 43-minute mark that, to me personally, they asked Billy if there was a player that got away. Like he got all these great running back recruits over the year, including Kevin Jones. They talked about that. But was there ever a running back that got away? And they bring up a running back that made it to the NFL and played for my Eagles. I won't spoil, but like I was like, oh my God, that is a great story and what could have been. But anyway, let's talk about quarterback Colin Schlee. We mentioned him in our last podcast. He committed to the Hokies to be our backup behind Kyron Drones. And this is a kid who only has 1 year of eligibility left. He's played a lot of college football. And I had said last episode that I think he suits the offense well with the way he can move around, run, get yardage with his legs, but also he's not, I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there that can't throw it as good as Colin Schlee. I'm not saying he's amazing, but like Gavin Wimsatt, or a handful of other guys we faced last year, Cam Francher.
Yeah, no, he fits the mold. And I think he is a guy who has played enough football where you're not going to be scared when he gets in the game. He's by no means been electric. Even in his best year at Kent State in 2022, he was under 60% completion percentage, 13 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Only threw 47 attempts at UCLA last year as one of the backups.
What was his rating at UCLA's passer rating? Was it 130, or was it?
So he was 138 in 20. So he had a pretty good rating.
That's not bad
at Kent State. And he's not by means a bad quarterback. He's athletic, can do some good things. I've been thinking about, okay, could they like find a way to medically redshirt this guy? Could they find it? Because this is his last year, like no COVID year stuff. I'm like, he doesn't have a red shirt. They could find a way to redshirt this guy and give him a year, but
you don't like.
I don't know if
this is the thing about Colin Schlee. You don't want to go into a season thinking he's your starter. If we, even if it's a year from now, I think all the fans would want the upside of Pop in his year 3.
Yeah, I think
You know what I'm saying? He is a perfect backup. Like that is what he should be.
yeah, and I think that's what his role is. And honestly, if you're telling a guy, hey, come back to the East Coast and be a backup on a pretty good team, uh, I wouldn't say no right off the bat. Like I don't think by any means this is a I don't think he's a great quarterback. Like I don't think he's a guy who could go out there and be equal to Kyron Drones. I don't even know if he could be equal to Grant Wells, to be honest with you. We don't know.
I
And
think he
so
could because of the style in which he plays. I think it suits the offense better. That's what I
that's true.
said last week, and I'll
That's
stick
true.
by that.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm not convinced that the 2025 quarterback is on the roster right now. So, and
Okay,
I don't think
that's fair.
that's a that's
We have
my
to think of
my
it,
gut.
for all the people that are like, well, why are you going to block Pop from snaps? Well, we had 2 quarterbacks on the roster that have played college football. We needed to bring someone in as if
Mhm.
nothing else for a safety net. And that's what Schley is. If you think of it like that, it's a perfect guy to bring in. And if Pop ends up being the number 2 because he beats out Schley, all the better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I don't mean that to say like, "Oh, I don't think Pop can." He certainly can, but, you know, I I think they definitely feel like if Kyron goes down, they weren't so sure that Pop was ready, and I think that's pretty clear with this move.
And it could be nothing more than ready in a durability aspect. I mean, you just
Mhm,
can't be that thin at the quarterback position.
mhm.
Moving on to some visits, and we don't normally talk too much about this because you don't want to mess around with stuff that's on a paywall or anything like that, but this is all out there. Alton McCaskill, running back from Colorado and Houston before that, he visited last week, and he had torn his ACL at Houston during spring practice back in 2022. But the season before that, he was, what was it, All American Conference running back or freshman running back of the year, had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage and 18 touchdowns. I mean, that
Um,
is an amazing amount of production for a young player.
I haven't been able to find it, but I did tweet that I thought he could win the Heisman Trophy.
Wait,
I'm
from like
not
two
kidding.
years ago?
In 2021, I tweeted, I was like, "I think this guy could win the Heisman Trophy." He's
Wow.
he is electric. He is so fun to watch. Um, I there wasn't much going on for him at Colorado. And I at this point, I don't know if I want to take that as a valid data point
No. Can I
because
tell you
2 of
something
that
that I read today about that?
Oh,
Was that
yes,
he
bring it
he
on.
went to Dion after his 3rd or 4th game and said, "I want a red shirt," last year. Because we all know Edwards and Hankerson were getting the majority of their carries. And so McCaskill saw that, and he asked Dion to redshirt. Dion was all for it. And he had nothing. I'll say this: Coach Prime had nothing but complimentary things to say about McCaskill in the article that I read. It was basically like he's a team first guy. He's willing to do anything, whether it's scout team or whatever else, to help our program. And so it was all good to hear. And so that sheds a little light on why he only had 4 games and 14 carries last year. Keep in mind,
Mhm.
he missed the first couple games because he was recovering from the ACL. And so I love the idea of taking a swing on that 2021 production.
Yeah. I would say if you're looking for a comp, if you haven't watched him play, I'm sure you can find a highlight reel of his Houston. If he's like a Virginia Tech back, I would say a little bit like Trevon McMillan, but with more burst, more top end speed.
Well,
And
that's awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
I could see
that's
that. The
what I
body type is similar. Yeah.
he's not a bruising running back, but I mean, when the guy gets in space, he's awesome. And when he plays in an offense that is downhill, spread the ball out like Virginia Tech is, really good. So he is one of the running back transfer portal options. I assume we're getting to the next one.
Well, are we going back to Ramon Brown here?
Do you want my personal opinion, or Ramon
I
Brown is visiting and there's
yeah,
all that?
I want to know your personal opinion for sure.
I take Alton McCaskill. The dude's a good running back. We've never seen Ramon Brown be a good running back in college football.
I You're not going to have to convince me of that, Sam.
This is easy. This is easy.
I'm with you. The issue, at least my perception of the issue, is that the staff, we know the staff has a connection with Ramon Brown. We know Ramon Brown has been sniffing around Merryman. And I think my estimation is that if he can get in, he's in. And that, but I mean, this is a cutthroat world. There's only going to be one running back, right? That's
they're only taking one.
They're only going to take one. So, I think if I had to choose, it'd be McCaskill, just because we've seen it. But Ramon does have quite a bit of talent, and so I don't want to. It doesn't really matter what we think. I think, but yeah, they're only going to take one, and so
also Alton McCaskill is heavily involved with UCLA as well.
Okay,
that is the other That's the other program. UCLA new coaching staff. They have their former running back is their new coach. So that's the other option for McCaskill. Not sure about Ramon Brown.
Can we talk about the big boy that was visiting?
I would love to.
Bama defensive lineman Curtis Perry. Curtis spelled one of the most unique ways I've ever seen. Khurtiss. Curtis Perry is visiting Tech. I think that was today or yesterday. Top 65 recruit in the country in 2022, according to the composite. Top 55 on 247's in-house rankings. 6'2", 265. So not a super tall man or even like a super heavy guy, but probably an inside guy. And he would be the 10th highest rated recruit to ever play for Virginia Tech if he happens to commit to the Hokies. Like right behind Logan Thomas.
Yeah, we're starting to see an identity recruiting wise with this staff. They want to bring in as many, monstrous defensive linemen as possible.
Yeah.
They want to, that is the core position group of this recruiting staff. And, I'm all for it because that is, again, that's a position, probably your second most rotated position on the field behind wide receiver. And then it's also a position where it's very easy to get rolled up on, very easy to get your finger jammed. You can have to go out for a series or two and not really be injured, but not able to play. And you need that next guy to come step up. So this is the position you need depth.
And you don't think it's any kind of concern about the guys we have on the roster. You think he's got 3 years left.
Yeah.
So this is a development piece.
This is basically a high school recruit, Pete. I mean, he's a baby.
He did redshirt a year at Bama, and then he played in a game or two last year. Not a ton of action, but a young player that still has a lot of eligibility left. And you want to, like Gilliam, right? Like you want to take a swing. I said it before, on that talent. That's what you want to do with a guy like Curtis. If you can bring him in, we want to bring him in.
Yep.
We have some needs, and that's why when it comes to that running back thing, we could, maybe we could take both. I don't think we can because we have a need at DB. We potentially have a need at linebacker. We've talked about offensive line, but I feel like that ship has sailed at this point. It's too late in the cycle.
Yeah, but a lot of schools want an offensive lineman right now.
Right. You're not going to take, even if they could both be here for a while, you're not going to take two running backs because we have other needs. And I don't know how easy those needs are going to be filled. The offers have been they went out, a bunch of them right away, and now they're trickling out. And the movement's been slow.
Yeah, I think for the defensive backfield, I think they feel pretty good about their ability to recruit high schoolers out of, for the DB positions.
Yeah.
Quinn Reddish is a guy who they feel like they can play. You have Braylon Johnson's another guy. Examples of players that they've brought in who they feel can play in the first year, 2 years. So I think they feel good about that position group. Running back, they're going to bring in somebody else because you're losing Bashal Tootin. We're not sure about Malachi Thomas. So there's potential you lose your top two backs. And then offensive line, it's a really rare athlete. Everybody's looking for offensive linemen, man. And so
we have a lot of young guys that can
have a lot of young guys that I think the focus needs to be on developing those young guys. I know you want to bring in talent, but it's just not out there in the portal. Like those guys aren't entering the portal.
Yeah. There were some crystal balls on 247. I'm not going to go into who, but if you're interested at all, have a subscription, whatever. A couple crystal balls hit the wire today, and they were interesting. So go ahead and check those out. Sam, let's take a moment to talk about our sponsor, and then I'm going to ask you what you're drinking over there. But the Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence podcast is brought to you by Rhoback. You guys know Rhoback. It's the performance activewear designed for those who crave activity, and they are stocked up on the Commonwealth. That's the number one Virginia Tech polo that you need to have. People have it, but you don't want to be left out. Two Deep VT is the code you need to get 20% off your first order. Make sure you hit that up. There's also the Berg, which is the two-tone quarter zip. They have the hoodies. They have these joggers, women's stuff, tennis skirts, and so many designs of polos. Make sure you go to their site, load up your cart, and use code 2DVT for 20% off. Rhoback Crave Activity. For right now, Sam, I need to know what you're drinking.
I am drinking from our friends in Charlottesville, Virginia at Three Notch Brewery again. Emperor of Clouds Imperial Hazy IPA. It's another big boy. Again, I needed it tonight.
Yeah, dude. That is a what's this? Is that a 16 ounce? Is that a pounder or is that bigger than that? It looks huge.
In the words of Mary Pippin, it comes in pints. For all you Lord of the Rings nerds out there. The bottle is a like really muscular penguin with a boombox.
They always put like an animal on those cans because I've had the King of Clouds and it's like a lion sitting in a throne.
Yeah. So, but as for the beer, it's a classic hazy IPA. It's a little bit stronger at 9%, but again, Three Notch does a really good job, I feel like, of having higher percentage beers and making it taste like 2% lower. They do that here as well. It's really good. Like it's just a solid hazy IPA. And I think the fact that you're getting 9% with it, where it tastes like a 7%, kicks it up a notch too.
Yeah, that is
another winner from Three Notched. They just keep winning.
Dude, their beers are great. I hit up their mix pack. I didn't have the Emperor in there, but I probably had 4 other ones, and I don't think any of them missed. They were awesome. I am drinking the Stone FML, and that is not what you think. It is Fear Movie Lions. You've probably seen this in the stores. It's been out for a few years. It's a hazy double IPA, 8.5%. And they talk about their Richmond brewery on the back of this. So I don't know if you were aware, Sam, or our listeners are aware, but there is a Stone Richmond, Virginia brewery. And this thing's okay. It is a hazy, but as you can see, the color is a little bit darker. It is not a New England, as I don't think it would be classified as a New England. It doesn't taste like a New England. It's not. It says it has some flavor notes, a tropical punch, berry and peach. Not as fruity as a lot of the other ones. I like it because Stone, again, another brewery that doesn't normally go wrong. It's not my favorite double. If I'm drinking a double, I want all the flavors. I want it to be, close to a 4.0 or above on my Untapped personal rating. And this is probably coming in just under that. But I do love Stone Brewing in general because I know if I buy a 12-pack, and I bought their mix pack, so it's got the traditional Stone IPA, it's got this one, it's got their hazy, and it's got something else. And they're all good. You're not going to regret the purchase. So Stone Fear Movie Lions. And I don't know what that name is from. I have to look this up afterwards. Okay. Post-spring ACC power rankings. Let me get the graphic up on the screen here.
Oh, look at that,
Sam.
That is not a beer in my hand.
he's just so dignified in this picture.
Of course.
And we've got some wine and cheese schools on this list now going into this new year of ACC football. And I want you to I can ask you questions about it. And I actually did before we even got this typed up. We were talking about it, but you got Florida State number 1 in your post-spring ACC. And I think that makes sense. Although, does the chatter about DJU concern you a bit?
Poor DJU has been talked about for 6 years now. Um, look, DJU, if you watched him his first year at Clemson, but mostly his year at Oregon State last year, every now and again he will make a play, specifically a throw, where you go, my gosh, I hope my favorite NFL team drafts this guy. He has every now and again, he just makes these incredible plays. He's a big physical guy, moves well in the pocket, does a really good job avoiding sacks, but really inconsistent. Sometimes he just doesn't show up to the game. That's what hurt him at Clemson. It hurt Oregon State a little bit last year too. And so that is my worry. Florida State has done a phenomenal job bringing in transfers. They had a ton of guys drafted in the NFL, but they brought in a bunch of guys from Bama and that coaching change. They've recruited very well over the last 2 years. They feel like they have a young stable of core skill players that'll be able to, fill in the shoes of Keon Coleman, players like that. So I think right now they're the top dogs until proven otherwise. But again, this is if they played today, if season started today. Once we get to the fall, I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State went 9-3. I wouldn't be surprised if they went 10-2.
I don't think they will, but any of the concerns you might have about Florida State, your second team on the list is Clemson, and you come out of spring and you read the stuff about Klubnik. It's like, well, yeah, we're not going to move them up.
Yeah, I mean, again, another year where I don't think there's a single skill player on Clemson's offense that scares me. I mean, last year, Will Shipley, maybe, but they couldn't use him the right way, and it was so easy to key on him. I think Maffa was a better running back for
I think he was a better pure running back too, yeah.
And again, their offensive line is okay. It's a bit above average. Their skill position players are pretty average for the ACC, I'll be honest. K. Klubnik, I think, is just slightly above average quarterback in the ACC. Their defense is going to be dominant, though. Their defensive front seven is going to take over football games. And I think that is going to be enough for them to kind of impose their will on their opponents.
I think their defensive front seven will be good. But I think people are still coming to grips with the fact that Venables isn't there anymore. And just because the star rankings are there, because I think Woods on their defensive line is back. I don't think they looked as like a Brett Venables defense last year, and I don't think it's going to look like that this year. I think it'll be good. I don't think we're going to get back to those dominant Clemson front sevens. That's my personal opinion, because we've seen Dabo's refusal to fill gaps with the portal. And he's got the big goose egg. Yes, as you're motioning, the big goose egg as in portal additions, which is just crazy. That you're not bringing in one guy, two guys. Like, that is nuts to me. So anyway.
They're 54th in returning production, according to Bill Connolly's S&P. And so I think this is a team that they do bring back some players from last year that you would assume get better.
Yes.
But I don't know. I could see Clemson going like 8-4, but I could also see them going 11-1.
Them at number 2, I'm not even going to disagree with you, because who else are we putting at number 2? You're going to move Miami to number 2? You have Virginia Tech, our very own Hokies, at number 3. And I even was like, whoa, okay. Listen, let's cool it here.
Here's why. If this was a predict the 2024 ACC standings, Virginia Tech would not be number 3. But the reason Virginia Tech is number 3 right now is because they are number 1 in returning production, numero uno, and number 1 on offense for that as well. This is a team that knows their identity. They know who their players are. They know where their depth is. They only got better in this offseason, bringing in transfers specifically to the defensive line where they needed it the most. If these teams were to suit up and play today, I only think Florida State and Clemson would be the 2 teams that I'm like, I don't know if Tech has the dudes up front, or like, I don't know if Virginia Tech has the dudes on the outside to play. So,
the problem that I see is that number 4, number 5 beat the crap out of us last year.
Yes, we'll get there. We'll get there. So let's go Louisville. Louisville is a team I think has a lot of talent. Again, they lost some guys in the NFL draft. They brought in a lot of transfers. I would have had Louisville maybe at the 3, but the vibes are really off there. And
the quarterback is not good.
Tyler Shuck is good-ish, but he can't play 12 games. He's never played 12 games in his career, and he's been here for 8 years. Like, I don't really know if Louisville has the magic that they had last year. They had a very favorable schedule last year as well. They were clearly the second best team in the ACC, so don't get me wrong on that. But I don't have the same vibe about Louisville this year as I did last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I put Tech ahead of them. I have NC State at 5, and I think NC State could win the ACC. However, they have a lot to prove. They have to replace their starting quarterback. Everyone else on offense sucked. So we don't really know what their offense is going to
There's
look
only
like.
one guy they have to worry about replacing, and you know who it is.
It's Peyton Wilson, who
Yes.
had 134 tackles last year. And
he was their everything on defense. He hid so many flaws for Tony Gibson. And I just think that without him, it could be a totally different defense. Now, they got Grayson McCall coming in at quarterback, and that's why I may put NC State. I'm not a Dave Doran fan. I'm not a Tony Gibson fan. But I may put them ahead of us just because, like, Doran has shown an ability to win a certain amount of games. Now, last year, because they overachieved, I'm expecting it to kind of go the other way this year because that's what NC State does.
Yeah, it is. And they do have a very favorable schedule this year. Again, this is not predicting the standings.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say for NC State, they did a phenomenal job in the transfer portal. It is not being talked about nationally enough. If those guys mesh on offense, they could be really good. However, they lose a lot on defense, and that worries me because Peyton Wilson and that defense covered up for a lot of issues. They're 80th in returning production, according to Bill Connolly, 88th in defensive returning production. So they have a lot to replace on defense. They were bad offensively last year, unless they played Virginia Tech's rush defense. And so we'll see. This could be a team that wins the ACC. It could be a team that goes 8-4. I think we can say that for all top 5 of these teams.
I think that two your list here, you've got Clemson at 2, Virginia Tech 3, Louisville 4, NC State 5, and Miami 6. You could take those 5 teams and flip them in any order. Like in terms of power ranking, not even maybe standings too, but like Miami to me could be the second best team in the ACC. And I know the Miami back thing, me and Robbie made fun of it every year. But Cam Ward is maybe the best quarterback in this conference. And he could, I think he is. I mean, I'm not even sure it's that much of a debate.
They have he has the potential to be there, but somewhat similar to DJU, who played in the Pac-12 last year as well, doesn't show it every game. He was 50th in QBR last year. This isn't a guy who was Heisman finalist or all-conference caliber. He's 50th in QBR.
Right. McCall could be the best quarterback. Drones could be the best quarterback. But Cam Ward has, I would say, an equal chance at being the best quarterback. And so if he does have the best season, well, then Miami's going to be the first or second team here. The problem with Miami is the Mario Cristobal in-game problem. It's not a talent problem, never has been. And I don't think this year it's going to be a trenches problem because I think Cristobal has done a really good job building up the trenches. So if this were my list, which it is not, I would, as much as it pains me, as silly as it may sound, I think I might have Miami too in a power ranking.
You could say that.
Because power ranking doesn't necessarily mean like on-field coaching performance.
Such a sports podcast. Like, what does power ranking actually mean? I would also say Damian Martinez was an elite transfer pickup for them. He's very, very good. That being said, he ran behind the best rushing offensive line in the country last year at Oregon State, who had multiple players drafted to the NFL on the offensive line. So we'll see.
Can we talk about? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
But we'll see with Miami. I think again, with Miami, there's a little more hype than there is proven production across their entire roster, and they can't play well in games. If they figure it out, they could demolish every team on this list. But they haven't figured it out in 20 years.
It's been a while.
So,
well, SMU is your number 7 team, and I kind of left them off the 2 through 6 group. But I would say that after SMU, I am drawing a tier line because it's Georgia Tech, it's Cal, it's UNC, it's BC. Like the top 7 teams in the conference, at least according to your list and according to mine, I would say are just a tier above. Now, Georgia Tech with Haynes King, could they surprise? Yes. And I know this is not a standings thing, but just by the mere fact that Georgia Tech's schedule is so difficult, I think that that'll affect how well they play week in and week out. And so that's going to affect their power ranking. And so I think Georgia Tech, Cal, UNC, BC, Pitt, Duke, blah, 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 blah. They're all a step down from the top 17s. I mean, SMU last year won their conference. No, it wasn't a power conference, but it's a solid conference. And their quarterback's coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did play, I will say this, a pretty easy schedule, even by G5 standards last year. Everything worked out schedule-wise for them. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind they are losing a lot of guys in the transfer portal that they expected to have. So there is that.
Do you think they'll be better? Like, obviously, you think they'll be worse than Georgia Tech. I do think Haynes King's upside is better than Preston Stone's upside.
I would say so. I mean, Preston Stone, a lot of his upside came with Rashee Rice in that first year. And then last year, they were one of those offenses that was able to just kind of run up the score.
On bad teams, yes.
Now, this is going to blow your mind. SMU is a very good defensive team. They've built a really good defensive culture there in the last couple of years. I think that could surprise a lot of coaches. Yeah, I mean, they got dudes in the defensive secondary. They play really physical, hard defense, which is not something we're used to at SMU. We'll see what that looks like against ACC caliber competition. But I think they could surprise some teams. But I also think, like we saw with UCF in Cincinnati and BYU in Houston when they went to the Big 12, they couldn't play 12 games at this level. They could play 1 or 2, and they'd be like, wow, what a performance. And then they would just get boat raced. And I think SMU, that might be the story of their season where they have really high highs and really low lows.
I want to come back when we're done talking about the power rankings before we close out. I want to talk about Virginia Tech more, but let's go to the bottom of the power rankings. Mm-hmm. You have Stanford as your number 17 team in the ACC. Mm-hmm. What is the reason that they're behind UVA?
They don't have any good football players.
What about Aomayor?
No. So I do I do my own analytical ranking of teams, and based on my adjusted rankings for last year, Stanford was 133rd. There was only 133 teams last year. They got boat raced in a very, very good conference, but they did not play well. They didn't really play well at all. The only time that they played well was the second half against Colorado.
And they won.
I like the coaching staff they built. They're going to play a really fun brand of football, but right now they just don't have the dudes on defense and they don't have the dudes on the offensive line. I would not be surprised if they pulled an upset in Palo Alto. Brent Pry, I hope you're listening to this.
It's not a good timing for us to go out there.
Oh, God, I hate it so much. But I think it's a really good matchup for Virginia Tech. I'll put that there. Like, I think Virginia Tech could play man coverage and dominate that game. But they don't have any guys. At UVA, I think, does have some good players. However, with UVA, they don't know who their quarterback is going to be. Anthony Calandra is a Heisman candidate, according to Twitter. And then you watch them play football, and it's not that good. So they don't know if it's going to be Musket, if it's going to be Calandria. Their offensive line is still terrible.
The fact that it's even a competition between him and Musket is ridiculous. Like, Musket should never play another down. And I'm not saying Calandria is a world beater, but, like, what are you doing with Tony Musket? only thing, like, UVA went out, they got some weapons in the portal. Like, they got Chris Tyree, they got some other players. So I hear you. I just like that offensive line is so bad that
Yeah.
I could see Stanford edging them out for the second to worst team in the conference.
And they brought back their entire defensive line, which was really good for them because some of their better players were on that defensive line. But again, when they played good competition, they kind of folded. And so
But don't you think the competition's getting a little easier for them this year? Because the Pac, and I'm not saying every year for the Pac-12, but like last year for the Pac-12, that was an excellent.
I was talking about UVA's defensive line.
Sorry.
For Stanford, the competition is definitely getting easier. but they were bad. They were bad last year.
Yeah. Okay, so you got like you kind of throw like let's go here. Q's. Now I would beef with the idea. It's crazy that Wake Forest you have at number 15 just above those two bad teams because they were so good just a couple years ago, but like I agree. Like Hank Bachmeier, like what are you doing here?
I mean, this is where Wake Forest is as a program right now. And for those who don't know, I'm not a big Dave Clawson believer. Look at their ACC record. 4-star recruit coming out of high school goes to Boise State, has a good 8 games at Boise State, but loses the starting job there. Transfers to Louisiana Tech, loses the starting job there. And now you're bringing him to the ACC. What do you think is going to happen? Do you really think you can win with Louisiana Tech's backup?
No, he's going to be bad.
Who can't run, who cannot run, and you don't have any weapons around him. I just don't know. I don't know what Wake Forest is doing right now. I think this is a different podcast. I think as a program, they might be in some trouble here going forward.
They keep getting rated, right? Like every offseason they get rated. They're just one of those teams that they're in the worst portion of the CFB landscape that like they're good enough to be in a P5 conference, but not good enough to keep any of their players.
Agreed. And I think the two teams I have above them, Duke and Syracuse, new coach, lost a lot of guys in the portal. Both of them lost their best players in the portal. Syracuse we'll see what they can do.
Kyle
but I think they're a couple years away, but I think Syracuse could have a good year coming up. Duke lost a lot of guys on defense. I think they're a couple years away. I think Pittsburgh's in some trouble too.
Oh, yeah.
I put them up there because I think they still have some dudes. But
they improved their O-line a little bit in the portal. I think Narduzzi will coach them up on defense, but like Pitt they don't have a quarterback again. Like they're
going to have Pittsburgh
a
football player. I don't think you can.
Oh, God damn it. Sam.
I can name one.
Don't do this to
me.
And
it's Yarnell. I can name their quarterback Yarnell, and that's it. They don't have any.
He's not even necessarily the starter. It's Holstein.
Yeah.
So we can both name one half of a starting quarterback. So that's Pittsburgh. That's our Pittsburgh preview. But no, they are in some trouble. Can I want to make a bull case for Duke. Yeah, you have a number 13 on this list. I don't think they're going to be good. They got a little bit eviscerated after what's his name left for Texas A&M. Elko. But Malik Murphy, does that kind of like if he catches lightning in a bottle, like all of a sudden, I'm not saying they're competing for anything. I'm just saying maybe they're as good as a Cal.
Yeah, I think they could be. And I don't think Manny Diaz is a bad coach. Everywhere he's been, they've had a good defense. So I think they will be decent defensively. And last year, you don't think about this with Duke, but they were really fast and very athletic, rangy wise defensively last year. And so I think they could be a team that goes 6-6, 7-5. I don't have their schedule in front of me, but I believe it's kind of their classic, pretty easy non-conference schedule. So
I think their over-under was 5.5.
I could see 6 for Duke. Malik Murphy's a freak athlete, big guy, but hasn't really put it together as a quarterback. Is that good enough to win you a couple games here or there? Maybe. But right now, I would say them, Pittsburgh, and Syracuse are kind of in that zone of they really are going to have to tooth and claw for a bowl game.
All right, the last two things we're going to talk about, and then we'll go to VT. Cal and UNC. These two teams, you have neck and neck in their power rankings, 9 and 10, Cal at 9 and UNC at 10. I know so little about Cal other than Justin Wilcox and the fact that Plummer came from Cal to be, Louisville's quarterback last year, and he was decent. But like they have a quarterback battle now too. There may be another Rodgers that starts for Cal this year. It may be Mendoza, but I don't know what to make of Cal. We don't play them this year, so I'm not so concerned about it. UNC, I think, is a fascinating thing because we got Mac Brown on the tail end. He should have probably already been gone. Longo left a year and a half ago. What is UNC going to be this year?
I don't know. I really don't. I think what you could say with UNC is keeping Omar Hamilton was really good. I think that team is
Did you call him
not
Omar Hamilton?
Wait, what did I call him?
Omar Hamilton? Omarion Hampton?
Wait, Omarion Hampton. Why did I say Omar Hampton? Who is Omar Hampton?
Maybe I just misheard you. I'm sorry. Go on.
Maybe no, I probably did misspeak. Gosh.
It's getting late. We're over an hour.
This is what UNC does to me.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what to think of UNC without an NFL quarterback. And this is going to be their first time without that. They have a bit of a quarterback competition. Like, I don't know if they're sold. Defensively, they're going to be in some trouble. Offensive line was awful last year. Absolutely awful. That has to get better. And for Cal, it's the Jay Knott show. He might be the best running back in the ACC. He's really special. He's a guy who loves Cal. I'll say this
He's
about
super
Cal.
good. That you're right. Like on my college football Monday recaps, like Ott's name was like virtually everyone. He is so good.
I'll tell you this, and everyone's kind of joking on Cal and Stanford joining the ACC. Stanford is a university, is such a brand. They'll be able to bring in players. If they get the right coach, they could be fine.
They had a good recruiting class.
Mm-hmm. Cal is interesting because the joke around Cal is like football Saturdays are just a good opportunity to protest something. Well, they are building a decent NIL collection at Cal. They're keeping some guys there. The rumblings are that they feel pretty good about their ability to compete in that space. Not be great at it, but compete in that space. And plenty of rich donors who went to Cal Berkeley. So with the fertile recruiting ground, NIL being put in place, really good running back this year, new coach who runs an up-tempo offense, I could see Cal finding their way in the middle of the ACC here going into the future.
Yeah, I mean, they should or could be better than a BC, better than a Wake, maybe even better than a Duke consistently. I mean, you're talking about a similar style of university there. But yeah, and better than a GT, because as much as I like what Brent Key did, GT is going to have issues going forward, whether it's because they're in the same state as Georgia or because of their academic standards. They're facing the same issues that a Northwestern or a Stanford is facing when it comes to academics. But anyway, that was awesome, Sam. Really enjoyed those power rankings. What I want to finish with is just VT was number 3 for you. I think 247, when they did their power rankings last week, they had VT at number 6. And so what do you think the highest we play, like, and power rank is weird, but like, what do you think the highest we could be? Like our ceiling in a power ranking, do you think it's 2? Do you think it's 1?
Is ceiling is in what could happen in 2024, or what could what could I convince myself of a ranking right now? Like, I could convince 3 is probably the highest I would go because we haven't seen this defense yet. And it was pretty bad last year. Yeah. Against the run. So that's a pretty fundamental thing to be bad at. I could also, I thought you could put Louisville ahead of them. I thought you could put NC State ahead of them. I thought you could put Miami ahead of them. My thought was, I think they have a better quarterback situation than Louisville this year. I think NC State loses their team leaders at pretty much every level of their team. And that's going to be too much to replace, I think. And then I think for Miami, they have a lot of questions on the defensive secondary, and they have a lot of questions with how they manage games. And we'll see what it looks like, you know? So
The
I
cool
could
thing
see
is,
Virginia Tech anywhere between 3 and 6 makes sense to me.
yeah.
Anything past 6, you don't know ball. And I honestly think at 6, you are at 6, you aren't taking into account the full picture of what Virginia Tech has done this offseason. Like
But
if
but at least
yeah.
at 6, I can see Louisville, I can see Clemson, I can see NC State and Miami, and I can make a case in my head like,
Mhm.
"Oh, yeah, they're gonna be better than us because of X."
No, if you're
I
putting like UNC ahead of this team, like you
Yeah,
don't know ball.
that's silly.
Yeah.
That's I mean, and it could shake out like that, but I highly doubt it, and VT with we know this is one of the more knowns. Like Louisville, while they had a great year last year and went to the ACC championship game in the first year under Brom, they're bringing in so many more new guys, and their quarterback is probably worse than last year, and so that's a big unknown.
I
Miami
don't
with
like the
Cam
vibes
Ward,
of Louisville.
he's new to the school.
Mhm.
DJU, even to Florida State, new to the school. McCall, new to the school. Klubnik, very questionable. And the cool thing with that is we're going to get to play them. Like we get to play Clemson, and they could be on a different quarterback by the time we play them because it's later in the
Ooh.
year.
Do
And
you think they will?
think about that aspect. I mean, everything I'm reading after spring practice doesn't sound promising. And do you remember last year when Klubnik called his own shot in that overtime? Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, that was
Because the
really
Miami
bad.
game, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Um, I just this conference is wide open, man.
It
Like
is.
Florida
It
State
is.
is good, but in a one game
They're
scenario,
not unbeatable. No.
there's 6 teams in this conference that could beat Florida State in a one game scenario on a neutral site.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
Boy,
Well,
what a season we're about to have.
wait,
This is gonna be
I would
fun.
say 5. Do you think SMU can beat Florida State? I mean,
Sure, why not?
it's college football. Any team can beat any team, but I'm just saying, like, if we're actually playing odds, I don't think SMU would beat Florida State,
I'll
but
tell you
or has a
this.
good chance, I should say.
I think there is a chance that Florida State had their lightning in a bottle season and it got taken from them
Yeah. Yeah.
because they lost a lot to the NFL draft. And you don't just replace like Georgia replaces that, Ohio State replaces that, Bama replaces that. Like, I don't know if Florida State's quite at that level yet. So, and Florida State, after all these ACC shenanigans, that team is going to have a massive target on their back every single week. How do they respond to that? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I these things in college football have a way of, oh, your season was really good and you happen to win a couple games maybe you shouldn't have last year. Well, that's going to go the exact opposite way this next year. And that could
Mhm.
be, it is impossible to go undefeated, even for a regular season and the ACC championship game. Like that is so hard to do. And they did it. So what are the odds that after you lose Jordan Travis, after you lose some studs on defense, you come back down to earth a little bit? So it is wide open. I love the fact that you have VT number 3. That is very cool. I haven't done my official rankings. I may have Louisville or NC State or Clemson ahead of VT, or you did have Clemson ahead of VT or Miami, but you did great on it. I enjoyed going over it. You had good reasoning behind everything. So that's going to do it for the pod. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to the Sons of Saturday YouTube channel, subscribe to the 2D podcast. There's your dog.
There you go, buddy.
He's,
Just finding a
uh,
new spot.
yeah, that's right. And Sam's name is now on. If you go to Spotify, you'll see Sam. And if you're on Spotify, this is something I should have said earlier. Rate the podcast.
Yes.
I asked for ratings last week. We did get a handful, so I appreciate you guys. But make sure to continue to rate. You can rate on Apple. That would be great. But also, we're trying to get those Spotify numbers up because more and more people are listening on Spotify, and it'd be great if they could find us. So please do
Yeah.
that. It's 2DBT on Instagram as well.
And I have a 9-hour flight coming up on Friday. So I will be writing up a fuller, more detailed explanation of that power ranking. And so check that out on sunsaturday.com.
Yeah, maybe you'll even have a better graphic when you post it.
We'll see. I don't know. I can relate to that one. We'll see. It's a good picture of me.
All right, man. I will talk to you soon. And for everyone else out there, till next time, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.